Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Leftist Audio. We missed last week, so sorry about that, but we are back. We got a lot to cover. Today we're going to be talking about the drama in the GOP with good old Trump taking it to Mitch McConnell. We've got the Texas crisis and how that happened, how it's unfolding. A lot of news there. And those are kind of our main topics for today. A couple other minor things, like a certain other political commentator is no longer with us. Looking at you, Mr. Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, one of
So sad.
our great
So-
peers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's our goal as a podcast to get as influential as he was. So go die in a fire, have fun.
Except be less dangerous to the country. So,
Oh yeah, much less dangerous. Like, and I
Pedal for
yeah, I
half
know.
of
If
the
since we
year.
just want to start it off there, like, because I do
sure.
have something to say, because a lot of younger people do not understand how influential this man was. If there was a person like we could, besides Trump, we could say is most responsible for Trump, I would put it on Rush Limbaugh. This man, even in the last weeks of his life, had millions of weekly listeners. Like, I know, like one of the largest like political events on Twitch was the AOC Among Us stream, and that was like a one-time crazy big thing, and that got a quarter of the views that Rush Limbaugh gets literally every single week from these boomers that just tune in on the radio. That's why they're continuing his show even after his death, because they just want to be able to tune in on the same week, do the same thing, same schedule, and have their brains melted over and over and over again. So, yeah, his passing is a very, very, very good thing for the world and for boomers' brains.
I would
Yeah,
like to
if,
point
uh,
out he started back all the way in 1975 and was pulling these numbers that long. Well, not when he started out, but still, that's a long time to be spewing all of his interesting takes, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, averaging like, was it 15, 16 million viewers a week or listeners a week? I mean, that's insane. The kind of reach that he's had in I guess, the influence over politics for the last 40 years. Jesus Christ. And unknowingly just spewing such hot garbage like cigars don't cause lung cancer in the year 2015, by the way. That this was not back in like the 70s or whatever, when there wasn't as much knowledge on it, but still everyone knew that it'll kill you. But no, in 2015, a man's just out here saying that he deserves a medal for smoking cigars. So with that kind of cognitive dissonance, I don't really feel like we can say much more on that.
Wow.
Did you have any your favorite Rush Limbaugh take, Aaron?
No. I don't.
I remember back to Hurricane Maria, I believe it was, when he fled the state of Florida, but then proceeded to tell people that Hurricane Maria was not a big deal and was actually fake, when it was a Category 5 hurricane. Um, that was probably the one that stuck out of my mind the most.
I would say either the I can still breathe because I'm not a criminal, or having a weekly like shout out to all the people who've died of AIDS. I don't know which one ties for biggest piece of shit award, but
A
it's
celebratory
definitely
shout
up
out,
there.
by the way.
Yeah,
Not like a remembrance. No, a celebratory shout out because people died of HIV and AIDS.
So when they ask, should we really be dancing on Rush Limbaugh's grave? The answer is yes. So. But let's talk about something a little bit more interesting than that. Let's talk about Texas.
I was worried you were going to say something more uplifting, and I was going to say this is the opposite of that. However,
No,
uh,
not uplifting.
yeah. So I guess let me set the stage, right? So I'm sure we've all heard about Texas and how a lot of them are without power right now after the snowstorm that covered, I want to say every county in Texas, but don't quote me on that. I think it was, if not all of them, just about all of them. And essentially, because of that snowstorm, the power grid had higher demand hitting it, and Texas, interestingly, is the only independent power grid in the contiguous United States. So there are three power grids in the United States: the Eastern Interconnection, the Western Interconnection, and anyone want to guess the last one? Texas. Full stop.
Texas interconnection?
The state of Texas. Yeah, they should have added interconnection onto the end, truly.
I'm half believing that exists just because it sounds like the most Texas thing imaginable. Like
the Texas interconnection. Oh, yeah.
No, the fact that it's just like, yeah, there's an East Coast America, a West Coast America, and then there's Texas.
And then there's Tex Coast.
Like they're willing to vote for it simply to be like seemingly independent.
I mean, they're the people who are always ready to secede. They're always at the drop of a hat. I'm out. I'm leaving America. Get me out. Like, we're gonna make our own America. But yeah, it just, well, I'm glad this time it's really biting them in the ass.
Yeah, well, I actually wanted to talk about that. So a little background on it. I was reading up on it. Texas's independent power grid is controlled by the Electric Reliability Council. It's Texas, otherwise known as. I haven't decided if it's ERCO or ERCOT, but because it's Texas, I feel like you got to go with the Southern ERCOT, if nothing else. But essentially, Texas, their systems all kind of joined together around World War II to meet production in that time, that sort of thing, which was the same time that a lot of other power grids were joining together. And in 1935, FDR signed the Federal Power Act, which is actually what brought all those, big, bad, scary regulations that keep our power grids from having these sort of issues. And Texas did not want to be a part of that. And so they avoided falling under the jurisdiction of the federal government by simply not connecting to either that eastern or western power grid that I was talking about in the beginning. That said, the grid is, contrary to popular belief and what Twitter would have you think, is not 100% isolated. In fact, just in 2011, they actually imported power from Mexico, which I would love to go tell the average Texan that they were importing power from Mexico. But they're also connected to the Eastern grid in a few places for emergencies. That said, they're only connected in a few places, which is how they maintain their sovereignty away from the federal regulation. And so it's not like they could flip the switch and say, okay, let's buy all the power we need currently. So they were kind of doomed at that point.
So yeah, then without power, I mean, some areas are still without power, and we're going on 4+ days. We're facing a genuine humanitarian crisis, probably one of the biggest in America in the last decade. I mean, you have people freezing to death in their homes. So, and people that rely on oxygen are dying because they don't have the power to pump it. Even the backup, I heard some stories of backup generators. Like they had backup generators, but they froze. Like that's how cold the state is getting. Um, and so in response, it's been the tale of two responses in terms of the political parties. The Democrats, and especially the more vocal online Democrats such as AOC and Beto O'Rourke, have been pushing online for food drives, have been raising money. AOC's raised over $4 million at this point. And then the Republicans have done everything they can to blame the Green New Deal, which hasn't been implemented, um, windmills or wind turbines, which, aren't actually dipping that low in terms of expected production, fleeing to Mexico one time. That Cruz thought, just taking a Mexican vacation right now, that's the best idea.
Hang on. You're blaming a man whose evil daughters forced him out of the state and drove him to Cancun. I cannot believe you would blame this on Ted Cruz. It was obviously his liberal Democratic daughters that forced him out of the state.
Yeah, you
I
left
mean,
out
his
another
daughters.
detail. That $4 million
Oh, yeah.
is for the illegals in Texas, not for the
Oh,
legal
true,
citizens.
true.
Come on.
That money's getting funneled straight to the cartels. Honestly,
Yeah.
I know it. So yeah.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it, but I want to drill into the blaming of the Green New Deal because I think it exemplifies how good the GOP is at really setting the narrative before one can even truly be established. The second this happened, so renewable energy specifically is only supposed to make up about 25% of the state's electricity in the winter, and they're currently producing about half that. But the coal and gas fired plants are expected to make up 60% of their production. And then the thermal energy that they utilize is down 60% and responsible for the majority of their energy loss. So while they are low on wind and solar, really the other energy sources are kind of the bigger reason why they're dealing with these rolling blackouts and just blackouts in general across the state. What's interesting is that immediately became the narrative to say, yes, this is, it's kind of like the whole Biden's America spiel you'll see a lot online, but this is America under the Green New Deal. And then it's like, I guess they never thought of winterizing their equipment. We have turbines out in Antarctica, like literally one of the coldest places, if not the coldest place you could even be, and they work just fine. So really it was just the fact that they didn't choose to prepare for any sort of cold weather.
Yeah, I mean it was a conscious choice. They've been warned multiple times in the past 10 or 15 years to weatherize their system. I think the last time was in 2011 and they were told like, "Hey, if you don't, weatherize the rest of your power grid, like you're going to be fucked at some point in the future." It only took 10 years for them to start facing the consequences. But not everyone faced consequences. Some of them faced great boons, like
And I was about to say, we can get into why they weren't weatherized,
yeah, because Satan himself, who lives down in Dallas, Texas, decided that this winter storm was actually the jackpot for Texas. Jerry Jones's company hits quote jackpot as harsh storms send natural gas prices surging. So
Yeah.
Jerry Jones has been celebrating probably about as hard as the last Super Bowl that they won, because now he gets to fuck over everybody in Texas on natural gas prices. So
Yeah, the CFO, that's actually a direct quote. It's not like an article's interpretation of the news. A direct quote,
that's from NPR. I can
from
drop
the
that link.
CFO Roland Burns. He said this week is like hitting the jackpot with some of these incredible prices. Frankly, we were able to sell at super premium prices for a material amount of production. That's the full quote.
So maybe, just maybe, privatization bad.
Oh, I'm 100% agreement here.
Dude, why are we allowing these things that are literally life and death for everyone be determined by profitability? I don't get it. I mean, I understand how we got to where we are, but I don't understand how it's not a moral outrage to every single person that isn't a sociopath. I mean, at this point, I just assume every billionaire is one.
So here's the
really,
question then.
God.
Do you think that the Texas grid will stay independent after this, or do you think that they'll be forced into the federal power grid and be beholden to all the regulations that come with that?
I don't care as much, honestly, because it doesn't like it did. The federal regulations are also not very good. I mean, we can talk about and we can talk shit on Texas all we want, but California of all states also faced rolling blackouts thanks to wildfires, and they also faced their own issue, and they do face rolling blackouts still, even when there isn't wildfires. Like California's also old, decrepit, and privatized in most of their power grid. Most of the U.S.'s power grid is privatized in some form or fashion because that was the wave that swept over the country of privatization of essential goods and services that we pay for as taxpayers twice every time. So whether or not they do, I don't think they'll weatherize if even if they do, I think there'll be some virtue signaling, for lack of a better term, towards like, oh yeah, we're gonna fix the problem, but they're just gonna bank on the fact that a massive winter storm is not gonna hit Texas again, and probably won't. And by the time it does, all of the people that are responsible for this will be retired to their islands,
Well,
probably in Cancun.
slightly disagree. They if they were on the federal regulations, they are required to winterize in the winter. So
I still think they'd face probably horrible winter conditions. Like they would face very bad conditions in terms of if they got hit by the winter storm this bad and still face rolling blackouts. I don't know if the federal regulations would totally protect. And if they did, they would probably Jerry Jones would probably lobby to get those protections removed or an exception made for Texas. I
Well,
mean,
he
well,
like
doesn't even have to.
remember, if they're under the federal grid, then they'll have all the connections. They can just buy power from markets nearby. Like
yeah,
it just wouldn't have been this level of
it
issue.
certainly
The
would not
California
have
piece,
been
I
as
agree.
bad.
But what are you gonna do to prep for it? A wildfire, you know?
I mean, they have parts. Most of that grid was built in the 50s and 60s, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has rated the U.S. electrical grid a D plus in terms of its sustainability. Most of the lifetime of the equipment in the U.S. power grid um, was rated for 50 years of service. We are at around 70 now on average. Um, and none of these companies are being pressured to update it because that would cut into profits for no reason for them. Texas was running literally like even before the winter storms and everything was running at like double the capacity that they should have been for a potential like preparation for something like this. Um, I don't know all of the details on that one specifically, but essentially like you want to have some ability, like some headroom on your capacity to output versus what you are currently outputting, and that headroom was like almost nothing. um it was very bad. Texas very bad, but also so is the rest of the United States because most of the US power grid is privatized, and it's a huge problem that's only going to get worse.
Well, you forgot one very important detail is that according to Rick Perry, Texans themselves are enjoying these blackouts in order to keep the government off of their power. They're enjoying being trapped in the dark, in the cold this entire week because nothing is more important than making sure that we are lining pockets of billionaires like Jerry Jones. And that is truly the real Texas spirit. But
Yeah.
it is interesting to see that that they're just so deliberately trying to push against wind power right now when you see examples from Alaska and Canada of wind turbines just spinning away at negative like 30 degrees, and it's how cold is it in Texas right now? It's in the 20s,
Yeah,
teens
it's
right
about
now.
25 ish.
Yeah, it's been about the teens. So we're talking about 50 degrees colder, and and they're still spinning away up there in Canada. But
Killing birds,
anything to save a buck.
right?
Oh yeah, and windmills cause cancer. I believe Trump dropped that one. So don't get too close.
I just going back to the Republican response to this, along those lines, it was essentially with Trump kind of went the last attachment to reality that the GOP had. They feel now like literally zero obligation to form their narrative around any sort of reality or fact or just objective take on the situation. Like before, they would try to just manipulate it and find a way they could fit the facts into their own thing. But with Trump, they realized they don't even have to do that. They can just blame non existent frozen windmills in Iceland and their base will go along with it. Or at least they believe their base will. And that was the Trump strategy for a long time, and it worked. I don't know if that strategy will be effective after Trump. And obviously, that strategy cost them the House, Senate presidency, right? But that is what they are continuing on. And if you thought the GOP was going to change post Trump, well, this is the first sign of it's not. Fox News is kind of coming to a head with losing ratings, and they kind of have to make a decision of whether to go back to kind of a neoconservatism, which is again awful, or just straight up Trump style neo-fascism. And they have chosen the Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham neo-fascism route.
It'll be interesting to see if that ends up coming to a head in 2024.
I mean,
because I don't know if you'll want to get into the next topic.
Yeah, I was going to say it segues pretty well, but I will say real quick, the leaders of the ERCOT council, the governor has called on them to resign, so at least those people won't be in charge anymore and can be replaced with similar people who will do the same thing. But hey,
I was going to say nothing will change, so oh well. Poor all the people that live there that have no choice in the matter, no say in the matter, but they're just selecting a new board of people to get rich off of this situation. Because I mean, let's be honest, we're probably not going to see a winter weather catastrophe like this in Texas if history repeats itself for maybe another 10 years. So, and people's memories this day and age are about 2 days instead of 10 years. So by the time it happens again, I'm sure it'll be just as easy to point to whatever the chopped up carcass of the Green New Deal that might get passed over the next 8 years and just blame that and move on. So,
Gosh, you're sounding more like me every day.
Oh, I'm so black pilled. Shout out to the black polo because I'm black pilled as hell, man. We're going on. It's February 21st. They're saying that they won't even pass the stimulus package until the middle/end of March. So I'm pretty black pilled right now. But let's talk about some GOP infighting because that's way more entertaining to me than talking about people freezing to death in Texas.
Yeah, so Trump, after he was acquitted, of course, wouldn't want to get too feisty before that. Trump sent a message out that explicitly said Mitch is a dour, sullen, and unsmiling political hack. And if Republican senators are going to stay with him, they will not win again. There's more to it than that, but that was kind of the highlight that I really wanted to call out. Essentially showing the divide between Trump, the MAGA crowd, and the Republicans that are in office today. Not all of them, but most of them. I mean, we still got some real MAGA enthusiasts in there. So I think it's a very interesting statement, and we've talked a lot about the Republican Party splintering post-Trump era. And it seems like this is going to just continue to stoke the flames. And I'm curious if Republicans cave to this and just try and embrace Trumpism further, or if they want to distance themselves from this and just hope it all goes away. What do y'all think?
So I think there needs to be a more explicit difference between what Trump can do and what Trump will do and what we think he will do. Trump has a kind of enormous amount of power and options right now when you think about it, right? He could, in fact, start his own party and splinter that way and like cause a lot of damage to the GOP. But do I think he will do that? No. Do I even think he's guaranteed to run for president again? No. I think Trump, the idea is extremely powerful and in people's heads and very influential, but Trump the person is a very lazy fat motherfucker who just wants to golf. Like he wants to tweet and he wants to golf. Like that's really
he can
all
only
he
do
wanted.
one of those.
Yeah, and now he can't tweet anymore, which is why, again, he hasn't moved to some other platform because it was never really about like, I'm really trying to get out my message. I'm trying to, focus test these tweets, or I'm trying to influence the world. No, dude was just a poster. He just wanted to post. He just wanted like hot takes on the timeline. He
Same
didn't
energy.
care. Yeah, like dude didn't care, and that's why people liked him. To be clear, like that, the Trump just speaks his mind. People had something, and that's kind of what they were trying to express: is that Trump wasn't focus tested, Trump wasn't calculated, Trump was just himself all the time. And so when I think to what he can do, he can do a lot and he can cause a lot of fractures. But when I think of what he will do, I mean, look at post-Trump. Look, Trump was like, yeah, I'm going to actually start my 2024 run the day of the inauguration. And you know what he did the day of the inauguration? He went out and golfed. Like he's been golfing every day since. So that's just my take on the situation.
Do you think he improved at golfing over the course of his presidential term?
You don't have to improve when you cheat. So
oh yeah, I had read about that. That's funny.
But my opinion is that I genuinely think it'll just be whoever is alive in 2024. If McConnell is alive, he will continue to direct the Republican Party. If McConnell dies, then Trump will jump in and win the election. It's I genuinely think that we're at that kind of a Mexican standoff, so to say, between McConnell and Trump. I think McConnell, for the most part, wields the senators with a pretty iron fist. And I think that they won't break with him unless it's looking pretty dicey on their chances to win in 2024. If Biden dies in the next 4 years while he's in office, they can run almost any Republican and win pretty easily. So it'll be, I don't think they'll need Trump in 2024. But if Biden does survive, or if there's some great up and comer in the DNC that possibly could rally actual enthusiasm and support for 2024, then they might need Trump and they might have to cave and bring him back. But I could very easily see either one of them, if not both of them, dying before that point. So I really do think it's just going to be whoever's left alive might get to decide the future of the GOP.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting. The press release itself, and sorry to cut you off, but the press release itself said that Mr. Trump will be backing any Republican primary challengers who speak to the Make America Great Again rhetoric and the America First policy that he pushed while he was president. So I think that will... I think we'll have to monitor how successful those candidates are.
I think, but
to see if
when
it
you look
shifts.
back to Trump's primary endorsements, he wasn't 100%.
Oh, definitely not.
I mean, you think back to the biggest one, which was Alabama, right? The when the is it Moore, I believe,
Yeah,
the
Yeah,
Roy
pedophile
Moore.
Roy
one.
Yeah,
Moore.
Roy Moore.
He endorsed the other candidate. Um, and so I don't think Trump has that style, at least, of influence over local candidates. People believe like, hey, yeah, I know my guy better than Trump knows that guy. You know, Trump isn't my total like director. If Trump now Trump knows like they're split in between two candidates, and Trump goes one, I think they go one, but not, you know, it's not this almighty Trump decides style um
No, but I don't think
endorsement.
we can ignore his influence either. I mean,
Sure.
if nothing else, it's going to have, generally speaking, most primaries are going to have a challenger that might get a little traction, but the incumbent is typically going to win. Uh, but if you can have more of that infighting there on the Republican side, I think that does well for going into the actual elections following those primaries. And so,
It's
I mean,
yeah.
like, Republican strategists, to my knowledge, have been kind of saying that they think that they can flip the House easier than the Senate in 2022 for the midterm elections, just because the party that wins generally loses the midterm elections for one thing. B, to y'all's point, I know Biden hasn't been in there that long, but a lot of people are quite upset about the progress that's been made so far. And then they only need to win, I think, fewer than 10 seats, right? To take back the majority in the House after they flipped 15 in the last cycle, because the Democrats hold a very small margin in the House for most modern standards as far as that came out. So,
The biggest story of 2020 that's probably going to fly under anyone that's not hyper political radar is redistricting. Redistricting is happening right now. New district lines are being drawn, and districts are being gerrymandered. Uh, we're not gonna really know for a little bit until the census results are out, which is kind of a big thing because the census results were just delayed by up to 6 months, I believe, and it's kind of throwing a lot of people into the kind of for a loop in terms of their redistricting results. But some states are going to lose a seat or two. Some states are going to gain a seat or two. Some states are going to district based on an independent commission where it's actually going to be, fair districts. Some states are not. It's kind of all of a wash. And I think we'll obviously cover it more as it happens, right? But all in all, Republicans gerrymander more than Democrats do. And because of that, Republicans are probably going to gain an advantage coming out of this cycle. And because Democrats have no room to give up anymore, I imagine Republicans will be favorites to take back the House in 2022.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're watching local governments that are GOP controlled starting the attack on voters' rights, that kind of thing. Like just here in Georgia, they passed a bill to limit early and absentee voting. So now you can no longer early vote on the Sunday before the election, which is when a lot of churches, particularly black churches, do a thing called Souls to the Polls, which is where I believe, like after the service, they bus people over to their local like early voting polling station in order to get people to vote. Um, and now I believe they're also trying to restrict absentee ballots to where you actually have to have some kind of legitimate reason for requesting an absentee ballot. And I'm sure something like COVID would not be legitimate to, well, our state's government, which has barely recognized that there is a pandemic going on. So it will be interesting and not in a fun way to see how voter rights are attacked over the next 2 to 4 years, and along with gerrymandering, just to see how much of an edge that's going to give the GOP in the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah, gerrymandering is a very serious issue. And it's what's even worse is it's per state, and we've seen, I forget which state it was. It might have been Pennsylvania, I want to say. Correct me on that one. Where essentially they refused to confirm a candidate.
Yeah.
Pretty much out of spite, if nothing else, because they wanted to. They just didn't want to agree.
Yeah,
to the election results.
I believe that was the GOP controlled Pennsylvania State House. I believe Senate. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a state legislature. At the end of the day, it was just interesting.
Yeah. And they just refused to seat the newly elected candidate because they were Democrat. So I think we're going to see more and more hyper partisanship, and in Democrat controlled state legislators, obviously they're probably not going to be focused on fixing any voter rights issues, anything like that. That's probably not going to be a big thing for them. They're going to be working on other policy, but that voting issues are going to be pretty much top of the line for every GOP controlled state legislator. That's probably going to be issue number one in every state that they control, making sure that they can rig the election as hard as they can for the next time.
Gerrymandering is nothing new. I'm curious to see how restricted absentee and mail-in ballots become, especially after. We had extensive election coverage, and so I won't rehash it all again. But those are going to favor Democrat-leaning voters in the mail-in absentee ballots, primarily because Trump spread all of that distrust in the system for those types of votes. Which, frankly, obviously not that I was voting for him, but it made me think twice about it myself. That's part of why I went in person. And I also just kind of prefer to go in person.
It's easy to back up that mistrust when you're also gutting the postal system, who's in charge of making sure that your ballot actually gets delivered and counted on time. So when you are actively making that system worse, and then you're saying, look at how bad it is, it's pretty easy when you're providing people with concrete evidence that, hey, I'm actively fucking this system up, so you probably shouldn't use it. And I think that clearly the postal service is not a priority in the Biden administration, at least so far, because it takes little to no effort to oust the entire board of frauds that currently sits on the postal service. Louis DeJoy and all his
I don't. Well, the president cannot remove the postmaster general, so point that one towards Congress.
Yeah, but this is not going to be a priority for them. I don't know if Biden has said one word on Louis DeJoy, so we're going to just see the postal service remain in shambles, and that's not going to be anyone's priority to fix it. So I don't think that that we're going to see any meaningful strides to enhance voter rights from the Democratic Party, while we're going to see active and meaningful change to taking away people's voting rights from the GOP in the next 2 to 4 years. So when you've got one party just kind of ignoring the issue, kind of just leaving it alone, and one party actively working against it, we're probably only going to see regressive policies enacted in terms of voting rights and districting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Brent? Welcome back.
Yeah, we were discussing
for a second there.
We were discussing the ways the GOP will seek to limit mail-in absentee ballots, kind of based on what we were seeing Georgia's already looking to do.
I think Georgia's actually pretty unique. Georgia and Texas are two, like, 50 and 49 in terms of the restrictions to voting. Georgia is obviously a much bigger deal because it actually went blue, unlike Texas, which didn't. And so Georgia will probably be following Texas's model in terms of how do you take an ethically diverse, uh, more densely populated state and ensure that it doesn't go to its best interest, which is blue. And you do that through hyper gerrymandering. You do that through not allowing people to go to the polls on the days that you don't want them to. Um, and it's essentially just what can the Democrats do to stop them? And the biggest thing is passing an Equal Rights Act again. Pass an Equal Voting Rights Act, which progressives have been pushing for a very long time, and can actually, even though states are the ones that manage their elections, they can't. Congress does have power to oversee them, and Congress does have the power to put forced rules on them, not to a like total 100% extent, but to a certain extent. And so, like, and so if Congress can pass an Equal Voting Rights Act again, we might be able to see some mitigations on these things. But if they don't, and if establishment Democrats just ignore it and they say like, "Oh, we just let states do their elections," well, then they're going to get what's coming to them.
I don't think that's a priority for the DNC, so I don't think we're going to see that.
You'd be surprised. The DNC likes to win elections sometimes. Actually, it's more
Sometimes.
just, yeah, it's more just the mansions, cinemas, all of those the annoying fuckers. Honestly, that really kind of put a hold on these things. It's like the DNC right now wants to pass a $15 minimum wage, right? Like the DNC wants to do some of these things that their own Democrats are stopping them from doing. So we'll see.
I just don't think I just don't think that they're going to treat it with the amount of urgency that is required. And I think that, like most things for the Democratic Party, they'll just keep putting it on the back burner because we can do it later. Oh, we can do it later. Oh, we can do it later. And it'll just it 2022 will be here before they know it, and it'll be like, oh shit, we didn't do anything about it. And then, oh shit, we lost. And then, then we're back in the literally the same position we were in not too long ago. So
Yeah.
I and then I think they'll wring their hands about it in like 2023 when they lose, and they're gonna be like, oh, we should have done something about voting, and I can't believe that we let that slip by us. We'll do it next time we're in power, maybe 2024 if you all can get out and vote for us. We'll fix it this time, and then it'll be the same thing. And it's just, the cycle will continue. So but I think there will be just a lot of hand wringing, no real action on that.
Yeah, I'm unfortunately with you on that one. As much as I like to be more positive about the administration and what's going on, it just doesn't.
It's classic Democratic playbook, dog. You win, don't do anything, and then the whole time you're out of office, talk about all of the great things that you would be doing if you were in charge. And it's while the Republicans just sit around and go, okay, in 2 to 4 years, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And then they get in there and they do all that. And then they just are like, and I'm just going to keep doing. And Democrats, all the meanwhile, are like, if only I was in charge, I could make so much change. And then, only to get there and not do it. So, I'm sorry, Brent. I'm going to take your spot for the most black pilled on this podcast.
Well, and
I'm
there are
actively gunning for it.
okay. So to bring in some good news, right? McConnell and Scalise and McCarthy are running the 2009 playbook. It's obstruction, it's polarize, it's work off this obstruction and polarization. It's good works so much that you can say government bad, but I am the anti-government party, so don't you want to vote me in? Right? And the good thing about Democrats right now is they're not running that playbook. Right now, the pressure is not on progressives to give in to their demands, essentially. The pressure is nationally on Manchin and Sinema, right? Like, if you turn on the news, it's talking about those senators not giving up or are causing like gumming up the works, right? The pressure is really on them to change and to compromise. Whereas before, it was not. It was essentially the people that were advocating for like right wing ideals for the Democrats were seen as the center of the party. Were seen as like the driving force of the party, and it's just not that same way. So the Republicans were running the 2009 playbook because it worked, but the Democrats aren't. Um, it is yet to be seen how good they are at this new playbook. It is good. Um, it is yet to be seen if this new playbook is effective, right? But it's not the same thing as 2008. And every political reporter, like every progressive political reporter, is essentially saying the same thing, which is like, yes, Biden is not great. Like, we're not going to act like Biden is doing what Bernie Sanders would be doing, right? But I was here for 2008, and this isn't that. And that gives me some sort of hope for the future. But just to round off that message, fuck Joe Manchin.
Well, I was gonna say
I
on the
mean,
topic of him, he met with people regarding his own constituents. I want to say regarding the $15 minimum wage, heard their stories and everything, and he still said that he did not support it. He's supportive of I forget his exact quote, but he said something more reasonable.
yeah, he
Uh,
said he would support $11 an hour, but not 15. So these people came to meet with him, literally struggling like to make ends meet, that kind of thing. He looked them dead in the eye and went, "No." Was just like, I don't care. I don't support $15 minimum wage. I don't care that you're struggling. I don't care that you can't make ends meet. I don't care how many jobs you have to work. Fuck you. Fuck you because you're poor. And it's fucking unbelievable that like and I know Mansion has been, like Brent said, more of the center of attention from the media, but like I can't fucking believe it. I can't believe that this guy doesn't have people standing outside his office, telling him to eat shit, that kind of thing. Because I mean, he lives in the poor, well, he represents the poorest state in the union. If any, like, of all the people that he could be talking to from the Poor People's Campaign, that was the group that he met with. Um, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if so many of those stories were coming right out of West Virginia, and he still doesn't give a shit. Um, and because of him not wanting to pass the $15 minimum wage, now we're seeing, Biden not wanting to challenge the Senate parliamentarian on whether or not he can go into via reconciliation, because at the end of the day,
Biden is doing his best to find an out for Manchin. Essentially, like he does not want Biden is trying to work to not have an interparty fighting. Biden has viewed himself as a unifier. Biden has viewed himself as the center of the party, as the I can work with both sides guy. And so if he can get this sticking point out on parliamentary rules and just say, guess we couldn't do it, guys, but we can put it up to a vote for 60 and where it is due. Then it's not this inter-party fighting um that he is worried about, right? What he could do, right, is take a stance, is say, no, it's going in the bill. It is, and it's going through the parliamentarian. And Joe Manchin, if you want to be the reason that this coronavirus bill doesn't pass, then you vote against it. Or do you want to be that person, Joe? Is that who you want to be? And guess what? They're going to vote for it. Like Joe Manchin is not going to be the reason that $1,400 checks don't go, that his state doesn't get a shitload of distribution effort money. He's not going to be that reason. So if Joe Biden wants to push Joe Manchin, he could, but he doesn't want to right now, and he's not shown the want to. I can see that Joe Biden like can be for a $15 minimum wage, right? Joe Biden could very well be like, personally, I do want this $15 minimum wage in this sort of like very slow but eventual way. But I don't think he wants it that bad. I don't think he wants it bad enough that he's going to put pressure on any side of the party.
Yeah, I'm really surprised he doesn't try and sell it with what like he did for the federal workers through the executive order of the phased-in approach over time. I feel like that quells a lot of the dissent Manchin currently has.
And
frankly, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, and to your point of like Manchin met with $15 minimum wage advocates, I mean, there are going to be winners and losers of every single policy, right? Manchin has met with probably endless constituents to policies that he's voted for and against. I mean, you could just as easily, right, write an article that says Manchin met with 50 small business owners that say that their business is going to die if they don't have if they have a $15 minimum wage and their family is going to be out on the street, right? I don't like, anecdotes do work to humanize stories, but we're talking about building a system and it's effective and who is being sacrificed in what. And Joe Manchin is just putting business owners over workers, essentially. And to any small business owners that are panicking about a $15 minimum wage, I would say, well, if you can't pay your workers, get a real job. Honestly, like, sorry, but Joe Manchin's not willing to say that to his business owners, so that is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, with a phased approach, though, I think it's manageable. It's just a little ridiculous. At the end of the day, though, I agree that if they wanted to take a harder stance, it would get passed. They're not going to stop the COVID bill. We are continuing to push it back, which is concerning, but it's not going to be the little piece of the bill that's going to stop the vote.
I mean, the problem is it's already going to pass the House with the $15 minimum wage put in there. So it's going to be deliberated on in the Senate for, oh God, I think the House said they're going to pass it at the end of this upcoming week. So it's not going to hit the Senate till next week, like March 1st. So it's going to sit in the Senate for probably 2 weeks while they deliberate on what to throw out of it. And they're going to throw out the $15 minimum wage. What else is going to get thrown out of there? That's what I'm waiting on. That's what I'm waiting to see. Because I think it might get scrapped for parts in the Senate.
There's a certain strategy that I was thinking about earlier that I think is going to maybe become more prevalent if the discourse doesn't get better, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it, is that House Republicans kind of have a nuclear option, right? The Senate Democrats have Joe Manchin, but the House Republicans have the squad, right? And so if the squad goes, we're not voting for this bill unless it has $15 minimum wage in it, then you get some real movement.
You mean House Democrats? Are you talking about AOC and them?
Yes.
Oh, I think you're talking about like the Republicans.
The reconciliation,
the Tea Party caucus, like
it can go back to the House, right? So if they take out, it does go back to a House vote. So, if AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, and Rashida Tlaib band together and say, we don't vote for this bill, we vote no if there's not
Jimmy Dore, please. Are we getting to another force the vote situation?
This
really
is actually effective, and actually means something, trying to put a Republican as the Speaker of the House.
I mean, you're right, but oh man, there's so much garbage on the left right now from the force the vote crowd, and that's the last force the vote. I can't fucking imagine if we got Force the Vote 2.0. Like it's
I
already
personally I don't see that happening with the coronavirus relief bill, but I could see that on future pieces of legislation. But this is too important, so I just don't see it happening.
You're not like. Are you going to make Joe Manchin are you going to put the pressure necessary on Joe Manchin to get this done? Like, people are living in poverty right now, working 60 hours a week. That's insane. Like, this is a crisis.
It is. I just
are you going to apply the pressure necessary? Because Joe Biden won't. The leader of the bully pulpit won't do it. You have your 4 votes that you can hold. You can withhold.
True.
You have that power. It is, like I said, a nuclear option. It is going to expend a lot of political capital. Like, a lot. And unlike Jimmy Dore, I recognize that fact. But unlike Medicare for All, we're talking about a bill that will actually pass. We're talking about a bill that will pass right now, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a sticking point. Will you apply the pressure necessary to ensure that it passes? I think the House Progressive Republicans have the power to do that if Joe Biden won't. And I think they should, honestly.
First of all, I just want to say AOC would be very insulted. You've called her a Republican like 4 times. But second, I do think that this is a more realistic force the vote scenario than the last one, which I think was I think Jimmy Dore some kind of plant to burn up all leftist political efficacy. But I don't see that happening. I don't see that happening because I think that Nancy Pelosi would come out and be like, well, $15 minimum wage didn't pass in the Senate. They want to get rid of it. So let's just get rid of it as well. That way we can just pass the stimulus money and move on from this, whole debacle, whatever. I think that I don't think that she would have any kind of spine to actually support $15 minimum wage. It's easy for her to support it right now because it'll pass through the House very easily via all the Democratic votes. There's not are there any Democrats in the House that are voting against the stimulus package?
No.
I hadn't heard of any. So it's very easy for them to push literally anything that they want through the House because it'll get to the Senate, where Senate Dems like Manchin and Senate Republicans will literally dissect the bill until whatever is left actually ends up passing. And that'll go back and pass the House with ease.
Speaking of, the reason that no Democrats are against it is because all of those dumb right-wing centrist Democrats in these swing districts lost in 2020. So there's not as many of those anymore. True. So you don't get the stories about them. Meanwhile, the progressives in the swing districts won. But that's going back a few podcast episodes. So,
but
we'll
see the midterm. We'll see the midterm when that 10 seats gets flipped, and then we have a Republican House. How exciting! I can't wait. But nevertheless, we have 2 no's and a yes. So let's monitor that. I'll make a note now. I will actually make a note so that we can sit here and we can see.
The leader of this force the vote movement? Can I be the leader? Like, can it center around me and our discourse?
Only if you live stream from the House floor. But I'm pretty sure there's a little more security there now after the last events on the floor. So,
listen, man, it got Dore tens of thousands of viewers at the very least, so it can get this podcast at least like 10. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. But it is. I mean, it is fascinating to me how many leftists, in my opinion, are falling for the grift that Jimmy Dore is pushing right now. It's incredible. Like, they actually think that it would be worth it to force a failing vote for little, like, no gain. I mean, they're like, so we can have a list of all the people that don't support M4A. You already have a list of all the people who don't support it. You can ask these people. You can ask these congressmen, do they support M4A? And they're going to be like, no, I don't. Except for the very progressive ones. And even then, there's some people who are going to toe the line, that kind of thing. Be like, yeah, I'd like to see it in the future. I just don't think it's possible right now. But even, I mean, that's a no. That's what that is. Like, no matter how you dress it up, there's still enough no's out there to know that no matter what, it's not going to pass. So why spend all that political efficacy?
So this is a totally kind of like separate topic, honestly. But just don't be surprised when you can find tens of thousands of people to believe anything.
True.
Like literally anything, right? We're not talking about a massive amount. We're not talking about like Rush Limbaugh audience, right? We're talking about 30,000 people.
We can't even get people to take a vaccine in 2021. Yeah.
Like we're talking about, again, there are certainly like 30,000 communists on Twitter, but that doesn't mean that communism has any sort of influence on American politics, as pog as that would be. So it's don't be surprised when every single side falls for grifts, because that's what a grift is. It's attaching on to some emotion through lies and manipulation, and anybody can be lied to and manipulated. What all you can do is either say like, hey, this is my reality, this is what is real, this is why this is kind of a stupid idea, and then move on if they just refuse to accept it.
Yeah, I just hate the lack of pragmatism
so
at times.
The key takeaway, though, is I am actually going to start a tracker so that we can keep some true updates on these. I'm curious how throughout the year, how many of our great prophecies come true. And we'll see who does best in here. Maybe we'll even start... We'll see. I'm thinking there might be something fun we could do with some channel point betting.
You understand that, these sports centers and ESPNs, they get away with what they get away with because they don't track their takes and hold them accountable.
Yeah,
right?
I know, right?
How are we going to be able to give our true hot takes if you're actually going to hold us to account there? That's not fair. Yeah. That's not fair.
How can I be the Skip Bayless of the left if you're going to hold me to account 6 months from now?
I know. A bold move, but hey, someone's got to break the mold.
We know you liberals gotta focus test all of our statements here.
You mean means test? Yeah. So watch out. And Brent, we'll really be having a great time during the midterm elections. Let me tell you, I cannot wait to doom scroll the House as it slowly flips over the night as the votes roll in. Oh, good times.
Never forget though, you were the most doomer on election night last
That is true. I was not a believer. I was
hopium that night, so get wrecked, liberal.
True. But that does it really for what we had for today. So thank you to everyone that tuned in to episode 8 of Leftist Audio. Too much drama in the GOP, but you can find us on Spotify. So look us up, Leftist Audio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. If you're here live, we really appreciate it. Hit the follow button so you can see us coming live. We're live every weekend. We did miss last weekend, I'll admit, but we're good about it other than that one. So hit the follow so you can know when we're going live, as we don't have really a dedicated time just yet. But that way you'll never miss out on the action. And you can see how all our takes work out now that we'll have our running list. You can get that real-time update on it. But thanks again, everyone.
Chat. Yeah,
exactly. It's always fun when chats can hype you too. So follow us here. Keep checking out. We're on Spotify podcast, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. So check us out there. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are there at Audio Leftist. Sadly, the one place that we were flipped around on the handle, but that's life. Maybe the real leftist audio gets banned like Trump or something. We'll have to see. And we're also on YouTube, youtube.com/leftistaudio. If you ever miss an episode, the VOD is on Twitch for about 7 days, or maybe it's 14. But they do disappear, so we're uploading our VODs there. So, if you prefer the video format, it's out there as well. That way you can see our beautiful smiling faces, or Brent's cat picture, depending on when we catch him. All online, so give us a follow, and we'd really greatly appreciate it. So, thanks everyone, and we'll see you for episode 9 next week.